At the time that the Cathars were about to be completely genocided, playing cards found their way into Western Europe. It was around 1370 that they found their way into Milan. And this is the same time that we see the first of the Marseille Tarot starting to appear over the next 20 years. As I say, my thesis is that these cards were how they salvaged the core teachings of the Cathars. Who were these neo-Gnostic Christians that developed quite a huge following through southern France. It became such a threat to particularly southern France, to the Catholic Church, that Innocent III, the Pope at the time, basically commissioned a crusade against the Cathars in southern France, and they wiped out literally tens of thousands of Cathars through this region. So what I brought to the cards was changing the way in which the cards are laid out. And unique to my work is the whole concept that the cards actually get their full depth of understanding by laying them out in a lemniscate shape. And the inspiration for this, as I was researching and contemplating, was the shape of the hats of the magician and the shape of the hats of strength or force, which was in the lemniscate shape. And it was this shape of the hat that had me end up laying out the cards in this particular format. And as a result of that, it actually completely brought a whole new way of relating to the major arcana of the Marseille Tarot. The majors and the minors weren't together for a long time. They sort of came together probably somewhere around the middle of the 15th century. We start to see them sort of coming together, but up until then they were separate. And so we had 22 cards, numbered 1 to 21, and one card called the Fool didn't have a number, and that's because the Fool is every man, every woman on the journey. She doesn't have a place. He's moving the whole time, whereas the rest of them actually had a place and had a sequence. Behind this dancer, this is what we call the sacred yoni, or the sacred vagina of the Divine Mother, which is part of infinite consciousness. And this is the place at which behind this dancer is infinite consciousness. And it comes into this world of illusion. What comes into this world of illusion? Infinite consciousness. Comes into this world of illusion via this window called the sacred yoni. And it's the point at which infinite consciousness gets to explore the whole notion of that which it isn't. And infinite consciousness is reconnected with itself through the sacred yoni. And we're part of that journey. We're part of that experience. Okay, suffering. Suffering is the experience of being in the world of illusion. The first card you encounter as you leave that lemniscate is the magician. And what is a magician? He's an illusionist. He's a trickster. And he's saying, and he's telling us here really clearly that this was a wand, supposedly, his finger. Depending on who you read, a coin or an acorn, but a coin typically in his other hand. And on his table are cups and daggers. There's also dice, and there's a bag and a few other things. But those four, the swords or the daggers, the cups, the coin and the wand, represented power was the wand, coin was wealth, the sword was about victory, and the cups was about love. And basically what the magician is saying, you're about to encounter a world of illusion, because I'm the trickster, and these are an illusion. Wealth, power, love, and success. They're not real. So we were told even before we were born, even before we took on human form, we were made aware that part of this journey that we were going into was a world based on illusion, that it was not real. So what makes us happy as human beings? All the illusions.
Yeah.
The majority of the world buys into the whole notion that they're happy if they've got control. They're happy if they've got somebody who loves them. They're happy if they've got money in the bank. They're happy if they're succeeding. I can tell you that most of the unhappiness that we have in the world is because those four things are absent. They're the things that are causing most people's suffering. And these were beautifully depicted in these cards. So the emperor represented the notion of power and control. This one's going to be a bit of a funny one to believe, but in fact the Pope represented wealth. And this is because of the time that we're dealing with. When we get to the end of the first millennium, the popes became intelligentsia, not monks. So pretty well up to the end of the first millennium, most of the popes were monks, and then they became lawyers and people that had degrees, had been to university and were highly educated. And what we started to see was that the focus became about power and wealth. Now, the reason that we have this more oriented towards wealth is that the two people that are seen, the two monks that are seen in front of him, are the Franciscans. They're the poor, the spiritualists. They were the poor priests. They were the ones that, and so they were the contrast of the wealth of the church versus the grassroots fundamentalists who were about poverty. The Franciscans were about having no ownership of anything. Until after St. Francis died, then it changed. But up until then, it had been very much about that. And so the very fact that they were contrasted in this card was very, very significant in terms of where that sat. The third one is love. So this represents the three loves out of four. Now, in the Greek language, they had a lot of different words for love, but there were four core ones that they were associated. Obviously, eros, which is that romantic love that becomes sexual love, but it's falling head over heels and that whole approach to love. You had storge, which was friendship love, and philia, which was family love. And basically what they were saying is that they're all special relationships and they're part of the illusion. None of those are real. And I know that that's hard when you're a mother or a father or because that's what we've spent our life engaging in and dealing with. But what they were saying is that those loves are an illusion. And in fact, all of these things get in the way of us connecting with what's the ultimate love. Does anyone know what the Greek word for the highest form of love is? Agape love, which is divine love. Okay. And then finally, success. So here we see the chariot. And in Roman tradition, the chariot was the symbol of having won the battle. And this is quite significant. And if anybody's had the opportunity to go to Siena and see the horse race, the Il Palio, the chariot, and it's a square-shaped chariot like this, still drawn with 2 to 4 horses, and that's part of the tradition of the Il Palio, which is about the victors. The horse race was an interesting one because what would happen was when a city was in conflict with another city and they had won the battle, they would have the victory parade and they would have a horse race with the knights to see who was the fastest, which was called the Il Palio. And the Il Palio means the flag, and it meant that if you won the race, you could carry the flag at the front of the procession as a knight, and then whoever the general was would be riding the chariot. And so it was about success. It was about having won the battle. Oftentimes, though, the victor would have another man in there. And some of you read my book, you'll know, but did anyone want to hazard a guess what the other guy was saying to this guy while he's in the chariot?
You're awesome.
The opposite, he's going, stay humble, stay humble, stay humble. Because basically the lack of humility originally was seen as the highest sin. And so they were literally being told to stay humble during this particular... But here we have somebody that there's no humility here. He's lost that. It's all about success, and I'm at the top of the pecking order. So what causes our suffering? So these are the things that we suffer about. What causes it, the suffering?
Our attachments.
Our attachment, or our lack of, evidenced by our attachment. And this is highlighted by three really dramatic sort of characters who now enter the scene in the journey. The first one is natural justice, the justice card. Natural justice, nobody's sitting there punishing you when you're experiencing natural justice. When I lived in Italy, there was a lovely big donut thing that they had there that was just huge, was full of cream and jam and that, and its name was Bumba, which means big bottom. It's fabulous. But you eat too many of those and natural justice is going to give you a big bottom. You see, nobody's punishing you if you keep on eating those. It's the natural consequence. And of course, you know, we're living in a world right now where there's a whole lot of consequences around natural justice, around people living unsustainably. And all of a sudden they're suffering. It's natural justice by virtue of the fact that they've created a lifestyle that's been responsible for creating what they perceive as being sort of the quality of life. That when things change all of a sudden, The next one, aging. Anybody's values being challenged by the impact of aging? As you start to lose mobility, as you start to deal with health issues, as you start to not become as mobile as what you did before, and of course the prospect of dying. And then the third one, anyone know what the third one is? Wheel of Fortune. Misfortune. Bad luck. These three things basically cause our suffering, because what they do is they take away wealth, power, love, and success. Here's what's interesting is that the creators of the cards are saying this was knitted into the fabric of the human experience. What's interesting is that these cards don't exist in the other side of the journey. It's only in the world of illusion. When you move into a place of total inner peace, where your values are aligned with sustainable values, spiritual values, none of this impacts on you. It doesn't take you out of your peace. So what are our options? So what happens is we go through the world of illusion. We're born. We have issues around power and issues around wealth and love and success. They're the things that we go through. And then we've got justice, time and chance. And we come to the crossroad. If you remember that symbol that I had, and we're at the crossroad. And so we have some different options. The first one is the world of illusion. You can go back and do it all again. So this is the person that gets the new girlfriend and gets the sports car and moves to a hipper suburb or whatever they do, and they try to recreate the world of illusion in a whole different format to what they had before. Now, not everybody has the energy to do that. So what they're going to do is they're going to find things to distract them from their suffering. So addictions is the big one, and aversions is another, but they're into sex, gambling, drugs, alcohol, new age, shit and glitter. Even that. People can get caught up in that as an addiction. But what happens is we just mark time. We actually don't go anywhere. So where that comes around in that full circle, we actually come to the crossroads. That person stays where the Wheel of Fortune is, and they're just sitting there marking time. The other option is death. Suicide. Suicide is one of the options that people say, I've had enough, can't do it anymore. And of course, what happens, and the reason I have this, and the reason that they have a Wheel of Fortune, is that if you have a look, the wheel just keeps on going round and round. But I want you to have a look at, for a moment, what's the difference between the Wheel of Fortune shown here and the one shown up here? Well, there's two significant differences.
The Empress.
Three.
So this only has 3 people on it, and this one's got 4, and this one's going anti-clockwise, and this one is going clockwise. Now, the Catholic Church would have said that this was evil because Widdershins was the feminine. It was going left, and that was evil. You didn't do anything to the left, it was evil. And so it was all this way. They had a name, and the guy at the top says, I reign. This one here coming up this side says, I will reign. And this one here says, I have reigned. So in other words, that's what happens in the Wheel of Fortune. And the one down the bottom says, I have no kingdom. So in other words, what this says is you're going to keep on going through this cycle of events. I will reign, I have reigned, I have no kingdom. I will reign, I reign. And have you been through that cycle a couple of times in your own life in terms of having those things go on? There's no guy at the bottom here, which is suggesting what? If that says I have no kingdom, if he's not there, what does that mean? There is a kingdom. The fact that he's not there says, because his name is I have no kingdom. And so what it's saying is, if you go Widdershins, in other words, instead of going this way, if you go the opposite way, there's a kingdom. And of course, what happens is when you come around, you actually, when you go Widdershins, you come around like this, on this side. And so basically what this card is saying is, you know, you've got to change direction in terms of what you're doing. And that's where the dark night of the soul enters. The dark night of the soul. We don't want to go there. That's a place we don't want to go. Why? Because for most of us, we don't even know it exists. For the biggest majority of the world, they don't know that there's another place to go. And even if they found out, what's the issue? There's nobody there to take them through it. We don't have enough people in our world who understand the journey of the dark night to walk other people through it. That's probably our biggest issue right now, is that we don't have enough people who know how to engage the dark night, who have been through it, who have experienced it, own it, understand it, and can walk with somebody on that journey through that. More than ever, we need people who know how to walk people really clearly through the dark night of the soul, who understand all the elements of what that's about. And we're going to talk about some of this because most of you will have some understanding of it, but hopefully we can give it a little bit of structure for you. Now, the dark night of the soul, it's called force or strength. So she has two elements to her that are really important here because you need these to encounter the dark night of the soul. One is courage. You're going to need the sort of courage it would take for a refined woman, this is a refined woman, to actually be in the same space as a lion and hold open its mouth. That's the sort of courage you're going to need to go through this journey. You've got to be hurting a lot to want to do that. And sometimes we keep on going around that clockwise wheel to the point where it hurts so much we'll go, I'll do anything. Suicide is one of those options, but there is another option, which is what we're talking about now.